Okay, good morning. Apologies for the delay, for the confusion. I'm calling the meeting to order of the Public Safety Commission, May 9th, 2022 at 8:44 a.m. Hi, everyone. I think we've got a couple of items on the agenda. First of which is any general public comment. Do we have any for the day?
We have no public comment.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Commissioner Cervantes?
Okay, present.
Great. Commissioner G is absent. Commissioner Ding?
I'm here.
Commissioner Donnelly?
Here.
Commissioner Watson?
Here.
And Chair Alsaroff.
Here. Thank you and welcome Commissioner Cervantes to the commission. So we have now two new commissioners that are joining us. I think we're still one short of our full scope of the commission, but now we have a list of six. Let's move into the first item, which is the minute, or sorry, sounds like we have no public comment, so we'll go into the next item, which is minutes of the last meeting, which is March 14, 2022.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Commissioner Ding is attending remotely.
Correct.
Unfortunately, the rules have changed over time, and the process for allowing remote participation of a board or commission member falls back now to the telephonic participation rules under the Brown Act. Those required that the place of anyone participating remotely be posted on the agenda. That was not done. Commissioner Ding can continue to participate, but essentially as a member of the public. He cannot vote and can speak as a member of the public. We do have a quorum here in chambers in person, and so the meeting is a valid meeting and can continue as a valid meeting. It's just the vote will not be able to reflect Commissioner Ding's participation.
Okay, I'm glad you raised that because I was confused, and I know Commissioner Ding read the agenda and the guidance, or at least what we received the same way, which was that we can participate by Zoom, we can participate remotely, and we haven't been notified that there's any sort of additional requirement reverting back to the original Brown Act rules. So, is there something that formalizes that for the commissions that is
Yeah, you didn't miss a memo. You didn't get it wrong. You got it. You followed the directions correctly. You saw everything that was presented to you. And you read it correctly. There was just, I guess, a glitch in City Hall and getting the word out to all of the commissions regarding that issue. All of the commissions have returned to in-person, or should have returned to in-person attendance, as council has done.
Can I ask you, and this is maybe the curiosity in me more than anything, is this something that is prohibited, or is it something that's simply a decision that is preferable that the commissions be in person rather than?
If you proceeded with remote meetings, you'd be having illegal meetings. So yes, it's prohibited. It's reverted back to what the Brown Act requires. There are other cities that have continued to adopt the 361 rule, which allows for remote participation. But in order to make that, you have to have a finding that there is essentially an outbreak of COVID. And as things have opened back up, cities have started to not make those findings anymore, including South Pasadena.
Got it. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. So Jeremy can participate as a member of the public, but he can't vote. Is that the?
That's the gist of it. Yes.
Okay. So the challenge that I'm having with this is that since we weren't given notice, he wasn't provided the opportunity. I happened to be able to come back in, be able to participate in the meeting, but not having had notice of this, not having been informed of this, he's being prevented from participating in a meeting that he otherwise would be permitted to participate. So I guess you're saying there's no, that's it?
Yeah, my job here
Yeah.
is to make sure you have a legal meeting.
Understood. Okay. All right, well, I guess if that's the guidance that we're getting, that's the guidance that we're getting. Thank you. Let's get back, I guess, into the minutes of the last meeting. Did anybody have any comments or questions on edits, the minutes from the last meeting? Okay. We have a motion?
I motion to approve the minutes.
I second.
Roll call? vote?
Commissioner Cervantes was not on the commission, so I believe he would abstain. Also with Commissioner G, who is not here. Commissioner Ding is not voting, which leaves us with 3 remaining commissioners. Are we allowed to vote if we don't have a vote, or sorry, a quorum on the vote? If we only have 3 who participated in that meeting to vote on the minutes?
The vote is to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay. Okay. Commissioner Donnelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
and Chair Alseroff.
Yes. Thank you. Okay. The next item is the election of a new chair and vice chair. So we will start with chair and then move into vice chair. So nominations right now are in order. Are there any nominations for chair?
Mr. Chair, if I may,
Yes.
given that Commissioner Ding is not present and we have another commissioner that is absent as well, might I suggest if the board would like to postpone that and move it to the following meeting, just as an option?
Sure. I think that does make sense. Since we're raising the question, do you know if there is or is going to be a nomination for another commissioner to fill the last role?
It is my understanding that another commissioner to complete the 7 will be nominated within the following month. The mayor, I believe, is looking at that. There's also some outreach to one of the existing commissioners that is not here, one of the newer commissioners. There might be a conflict there, so we're trying to work that out. So as my suggestion would be is that we postpone this until we get that ironed out. And I would estimate that would probably be at the end of the month that we'll get that worked out.
Okay.
So that when we have our following meeting, we can come back and actually have a full quorum and then make an appropriate, the commission can make an appropriate recommendation.
Sure. Okay. I think that makes sense. Is everybody okay with that?
Oh, can I make a public comment?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I don't plan on accepting any nominations. So I think that anyone that would be nominated for chair or vice chair is sitting in that room. And I'd be happy if you guys, I have no objection to you guys proceeding, is my comment.
With respect to that, there may be an issue with some of the members that were nominated as commissioners not serving as commissioners.
Okay.
What does that mean? I'm sorry.
One of the commissioners that has been appointed is reconsidering. And we still have a vacant seat that needs to be filled aside from that.
I guess my point is that we're unlikely to nominate someone that's brand new to the commission. While we're allowed to, it's very unlikely that someone that's brand new to the commission will end up being vice chair or chair. So I think that from a practical standpoint, those people are already in that room, and the people voting would not really have a basis to, we could legally conduct this nomination and voting, if I'm correct.
Well, I guess I'm curious, is that your concern? Is that essentially we don't have a full post of the options for chair or chair?
That is just something I'm recommending that you consider, is that you are not fully represented as a board. And although Commissioner Ding makes a valid point, there is still a possibility that someone could, even though they do not have the tenure,
Nominate or
could be nominated and or seek nomination.
I think that that's fair. That's valid. And I think.
Can
yeah,
I
please.
say something?
Sure.
You know, don't forget that we are May already. And this is going into
Yeah.
half a month
Yep.
without a working commission. So we need, I think we should nominate people for chair at least. But because this is not good to keep on postponing it. This used, I thought in the past it was, everything was pretty much settled by January or February. So now we're going into May, and now we're May, excuse me. So we're going into June, which is half a year, and this commission will be able to accomplish or do anything without the chair. So I really think even though it seems like a good idea, what you're saying about not nominating someone, I think the need of it is that we have a working commission, and we do need to have someone appointed for chair.
Absolutely. It is certainly your prerogative. If that's the way that the commission decides to go, we can certainly do that. If not, we still have a chair that would be representing, but that is entirely up to this commission to decide.
Are you willing to serve for another month as chair?
I think if I would prefer, if you're asking me personally, I would prefer that I do a handoff, not because I don't plan on continue serving as chair, but because I think it's the Commissioner Cervantes' point. I think having a new chair in sooner, to be able to fill out the rest of the year, I think makes the most sense practically.
Can we vote for chair and keep vice chair to next meeting?
Permissible.
Yes.
I think if there's some consensus to that concept, it seems like there is.
I think it's a good idea.
Great idea. Okay, then let's proceed with the nominations for chair, and we'll defer the election of the vice chair to the next meeting. So back to it. Nominations are now in order, and I'll pose the question: are there any nominations for chair? I'll start the nominations by nominating Ed.
Can I second?
Yes.
I
Second.
third.
Okay.
Jeremy? Oh, I guess, can we have public comment?
Commissioner Donnelly, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I do.
Then let's, if there are no other nominations, then no other nominations. Okay. Then let's take a roll call vote.
Commissioner Cervantes,
Yes.
Commissioner Donnelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
and Chair Alsteroff.
Yes. So Commissioner Donnelly is now elected chair. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Donnelly. And
Thank you.
as per our procedures, I'm going to turn over the meeting to Chair Donnelly for the remainder of the meeting, and then for the next meeting, we'll do the election of the vice chair.
What's necessary to be sure that we make the vice chair election and nomination on the agenda? Is that something that rolls over automatically, or do we need to make a motion to ensure that?
It would probably be best to, for a motion to table the discussion regarding vice chair to the next regular scheduled
Okay.
meeting.
Can I get a motion to table that discussion?
I'll move.
A second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion regarding?
Can we do a roll call, please?
Can I ask a question? When we're talking about nominating a vice chair, would that experience from being on other commissions and having chair other commissions count as being prepared for serving on the vice chair or whatever position like that?
I'm sorry. So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're asking if someone has previous experience as a chair or vice chair in another commission, would that prepare you for a chair or vice chair
Would
position
that be
here?
considered as past experience on this, even though, you know, like in my case, I'm brand new here and I had followed with much interest what has been going on with public safety. However, I feel that in case we don't have someone to accept the vice chair that has been in previous, you should consider nominate someone who has had experience in other commissions, especially they have chair other commissions or things like that.
Sure. There is no requirement for anybody to have experience to be a chair or vice chair, but certainly that additional experience would make that person probably a very good candidate. So, but it would be up to the commission to accept that.
So we will consider all reasonable nominations at the next meeting for vice chair. Can we get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Cervantes,
Yes,
Commissioner Donnelly, or sorry, Chair Donnelly,
Yes.
Commissioner Watson,
Yes.
and Commissioner Alseroff.
Yes.
Okay, so next agenda item is the finalization of the work plan for this year. Chief Zielinski.
Well, thank you very much for being here this morning. In the last meeting, we didn't have a quorum, but prior to that, we had given the commission the draft work plan. If you have that in front of you, as Commissioner Cervantes had mentioned, we're already halfway through the year. So there are a number of things that we've either already accomplished that are on this or have reorganized. Having looked at it, is there anybody on the commission based on what we provided that would like to make any amendments and or changes or edits to the draft proposal? And then just as of note, we also provided the city strategic plan. We wanted to align our work plan with the city's strategic plan so that we were accomplishing all the goals that we needed for the year. And then also, if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer those as well.
There's been no changes since we looked at this in February.
No, the only thing I will note is that we're looking at the police department's open house, or what we used to call the police department's open house. Then it turned into the safety fair. That has now changed. Typically, we did it in September. Now we're moving it to October. There will be no car show with it as we used to do. But instead of having it at a public safety fair, it's now turning into a city hall open house with police, fire, and all the city departments presenting displays and inviting the public to be a part of that. So that's really the only significant change. And as you all know, the Public Safety Commission plays a huge part in that. So as we continue to move forward with that, I will keep you updated. But that is also subject to any health order changes that potentially may come about, considering where we are with COVID.
And is that in conjunction with another public event, or is that a standalone event?
No, that'll be a standalone event. In years previously, as I mentioned, we used to do it with the car show, the Tournament of Roses. There were some changes on their end, but we're still going to have our open house.
Great.
But it'll be a standalone.
Okay. So can we have a motion to approve the 2022 work plan?
I motion to approve the 2022 work plan.
I second.
Okay. And let's have a roll call vote on approving that work plan.
Commissioner Cervantes,
Approve.
Commissioner Watson,
Approved.
Commissioner Alseroff,
Yes.
and Chair Donnelly.
Yes. Okay. So it looks like the next item on our agenda is an information report on Assembly Bill 481.
Yes, thank you. So in September, Governor Newsom signed Assembly Bill 481, which is the purchase, acquisition, and use and policy of military equipment for law enforcement agencies. And I will say that the title of the bill is A little scary when you see it because we're talking about military equipment. However, if you look at what's listed in the item, I think there's 15 sections. South Pasadena has equipment in 4 of those sections, but it's not all necessarily military equipment. For instance, an unarmed drone is considered military equipment. Police rifles are considered military equipment, amongst a number of other things. So as part of that, the police department is required to do a couple of different things. One is we're required to list all the equipment that we have that falls under those guidelines. We're required to come up with a policy. We're required to list the fiscal issues with that equipment, how it's used. We're also required to put our policy and all our equipment online 30 days before a public meeting. And by the way, in order for this to pass, our governing body, which would be the city council, is required to approve all this. And we have to have it everything listed 30 days prior to that public body meeting and deciding. And then once we do that, they have 180 days after that to approve it. So our intent is to bring this to the city council on the 18th. It was initially scheduled for the 4th, which was the previous commission or council meeting. It got pulled. And I know there was some community concern because it was listed on the agenda. There was a memo that went out. It was a very simple memo that said military equipment was going to be pulled or postponed rather. The meeting was opened and it was going to be continued. And I know there is some public concern and comment because when people look at it, they see the bill and they see, oh my gosh, military equipment, what is going on? And I did a lot of outreach over the last week, quelling some of the concerns, and that is the police department is not looking at this time to purchase any equipment. It is simply that we are keeping our existing equipment that we've had for years, and we're adopting or we're asking council to adopt a new policy that we've drafted. So I'll go through each of that with you and explain what it means and what it entails for us. And afterwards, I'll be happy to answer any questions. Okay, so as far as the equipment goes, we have 4 rifles. They're .308 caliber rifles. Those rifles have been in our inventory. We got 2 of them about 15 years ago, and then about 7 years ago, we got 2 additional. So those are not standard issue what we issue to our patrol officers. There are only certain officers that have been through training that can use them. And also listed on there is the ammunition that goes with it. There are a couple different types of ammunition. The ammunition, the reason why we use so many different types is there's different ammunition for different jobs, basically. So I'm going to say this in a layman's terms. It's like a toolbox. If I show up and I have a broken television and I have my toolbox and I open it up and I only have one tool in there, maybe it's a hammer, and I hit the TV beeps and buzzes and then it comes back on, that's great. But if I do it again and then I break the TV because I don't have the right tools or the right equipment, then I'm in trouble. So this is really our toolbox. We have the right ammunition for the right job. There's certain ammunition that we use for penetration, meaning potentially going through a glass window. There are certain ammunition that is frangible so that if it hits something, it breaks up so that it doesn't travel through walls or other things. So there's a number of different types of ammunition that are listed there along with those rifles. The other thing we have is what we call a 40 millimeter impact weapon. And that is another type of rifle. It shoots non-lethal rounds. They're foam tipped. It's 40 millimeter because it's 40 millimeter in diameter. Some of it you've probably seen on TV during the riots or other First Amendment assemblies or gatherings that turned unlawful. And with those, there's various ammunitions that are shot out of that. We use a couple of different types. We prefer the foam tipped ammunition, and that is designed for if there is a scenario where we would need to incapacitate someone and non-lethal force to be used, then we would use that. What that does is that gives us distance so we don't have to come up to someone close and we can hit them with that impact round and hopefully incapacitate them. There's another round that we use that would be used for, say, someone is barricaded inside their car and they're not coming out and perhaps they're armed. We could use that round to break the window and it would shatter the window, creating a hole. And then we could potentially put pepper spray or oleum capsicum type of chemical in there to flush them out of the car. I'll give you an example of when we would use that. We had a person that was armed with a knife. We didn't want to approach that person. It would have been too close and too dangerous. So in that circumstance, we would deploy the 40 millimeter and be able to incapacitate them at a distance, hit them, they would drop the knife, be incapacitated, then we could go and take them into custody. A lot of these tools like that, those non-lethal tools, those are tools that have been designed out of case scenarios that have occurred where officers didn't have those tools and they had to resort to lethal or deadly force. So these tools allow us to make better decisions, give us time, give us safety, give us distance, so that we don't have to resort to lethal or deadly force. So years ago, I'll give you an example. Riverside Police Department had a very popular case called the Taisha Miller case. And this was a young lady that was passed out in her car. She was in the passenger seat and she had a firearm on her lap. The officers approached, they banged on the window and she wasn't responding, so they broke the window. When they broke the window, she responded, she was startled, she grabbed the gun, and unfortunately she was fatally shot. In this case scenario, this is one of the tools that came out of that, is that now the officers would have some distance, take cover. They could break that window, as I mentioned earlier, with a round that it's a little harder and it's designed to go through windows. That's what it's designed to do, is break windows. And then they could have put tear gas or something in there from a safe distance, so that when she woke up, they wouldn't have had to resort to deadly force. So these are tools that are really valuable to the police department, that allow us and give us the flexibility so that we don't always have to resort to something more significant than is required or necessary. There's been some concerns, especially with the 40 millimeter over the last year or two with the social justice movements. Assembly Bill 48 came in, I want to say also in September, that really regulated when law enforcement can use tools like that 40 millimeter. It's been a very popular topic in the media these days, is with that 40 millimeter, with the first assembly gatherings that have been questioned, law enforcement was using those 40 millimeters pretty aggressively. Individuals that were hit with those 40 millimeters, they do hurt. There's no doubt about it. It'll leave a welt and a bruise. And that's what it's designed to do. But there was some question on, did it really need to be used at that time if it was a true First Amendment assembly and there were nothing other than, if there was no physical threat and it was simply a disobedience of orders. So Assembly Bill 48 came in, and it regulates when law enforcement can use tools like that at a gathering. And so as I mentioned, it can't be for simply disobeying a direct order. It has to be some sort of physical threat. If the officer uses that tool, there has to be a report done within 30 days that's made public. You have to account for who used the tool, how many rounds were fired through that weapon, what the circumstances were. There's quite a substantial list of reporting requirements that are now required, where previously it was up to the individual agency to do their own reporting. Now it is actually mandatory. So along with our policy that you all had a chance to see, there is also other requirements as the state is moving forward with changing and adapting law enforcement. So with that, we also have some inert training devices, as well as live training devices, which are what we call flashbangs or gas grenades. And I don't want to scare anybody with the term grenade, but it is a canister where we pull the pin, and when it goes off, a gas, typically it would be pepper spray or could be tear gas, would deploy. Those are considered what we call grenades. And then also flashbangs. Flashbangs that's the common trade name, is when we pull the pin on that, it's a canister and it goes off and it creates a loud noise and a very bright light, and it is distracting. That is meant to simply do that, is to distract someone. We have those in our inventory. Those are training only tools. We'd like to keep those. And the reason why we would keep those as training items is when we do get deployed on mutual aid, There is, especially for First Amendment or other types of gatherings. If other agencies use those, it is important that our officers understand and know how to work around it or work through it. So we use that as a training tool when we go to our range training up in Burro Canyon, where we will deploy those and give the officers an opportunity to experience what that gas feels like, how to work through it, how to don their equipment, so that if they're in the field during one of these movements and it is deployed by another agency, that they know how to respond appropriately. One of the questions I got this week from the community was, what about mutual aid? And do we really need this equipment? Because, for instance, if we have a SWAT call out, we typically would call the LA County Sheriff's Department and they would respond with their tools. And so I had a community member ask, well, if they're responding, why does South Pasadena need it? I thought that's a fair question. Part of the problem is now, as times are changing, we used to be able to call the Sheriff's Department or some of our other allied agencies and come and assist us pretty frequently, and there were no questions asked. As times are changing, one, the response time is also getting pushed back. It's taking longer for the Sheriff's Department to respond. And to give you an example, we had an armed person up in the hills around Hanscom. She had barricaded herself in the house and she had fired a few rounds from a pistol. We called the Sheriff's Department as a barricaded suspect. It was an hour before they sent a supervisor. And the supervisor assessed the situation, took him about 20 minutes, and then he finally decided that it met their protocol, and now he would call the SWAT team. The SWAT team had a 2-hour ETA to come to South Pass. So now we're talking about 3 hours from the time we first got there and she fired her pistol before the SWAT team would get there. We were fortunate that we had that time to wait, and we were able to take her into custody before the Sheriff's Department actually got there. She gave up. 3 hours is a pretty long time, and most of these incidents do not last that long. So we keep these tools, as I mentioned, the rifles, the 308 rifles, we keep those tools with us so that if the circumstance dictates and we do not have the luxury of waiting for our outside agencies to come, that we have some tools available so that we can act appropriately. Another issue that's coming up more and more is departments now, especially the Sheriff's Department, and certainly South Pasadena does it. They're looking at the liability. Sheriff's Department is looking at, look, if we respond to an outside agency, you got to remember they get a lot of calls from all the agencies, 45 different individual cities within the county. While they will respond, they're looking at their liability. And if it's a high likelihood that a use of force or a deadly force situation is going to occur, they take in consideration when they're deciding whether or not they're going to respond. Just as South Pasadena would. When San Marino calls and asks for assistance, we're happy to provide it, but we also get all the circumstances because we don't want to put South Pasadena in a position to where we're going to incur liability that probably shouldn't be incurred. So the Sheriff's Department, Pasadena, all these agencies are doing the same thing. They're not as willing to help as they used to be. And then, of course, there's also some political considerations to take note of with the Sheriff's Department now. They're changing a lot of their protocols as far as how they police, where they respond, what equipment they respond with. So while we do rely on them, we also can't leave South Pasadena in their hands without any equipment for the police. So that's why we have some of these items so that we can respond accordingly and quickly if need be. So that is kind of the gist of the information report, but I'm happy to take any questions or answer anything that any of you may have. Yes.
I have a question on when you were talking about the flashbang.
Yes.
And you said you want to use them for training, but is it a policy in the city that officers do not use those in the field?
There's a couple different issues with flashbangs and all the gas that we use. First, an individual can only use those if they've been through the appropriate post-state training. And there's only a few officers that have been through that. So a typical officer would not carry those. They're not issued. They are in an armory. So they are not in a police car. They are not, matter of fact, none of the equipment that I just mentioned is issued to patrol officers to carry out in the field. The only thing that would be the 40 millimeter, and that would be in the watch commander's car. That would not be in the patrol officer's car. So it would even to use that would require not only for the officers to be trained in it, to follow policy, but they would also need additional approval from the watch commander. So there's multiple levels of approval before we would use something like that. Now take it further to the gas or the flashbangs, that is even more specialized. So now we only have a few officers that are trained in that. It is not readily available. It would require someone to have access to the armory, a watch commander per se, and they would have to still follow the policy. And there's a separate guideline and policy, but they'd also have to follow the state policy when deploying something of that nature.
That helps clarify. It sounded to me like we don't use it except in mutual aid situations, but it's not like it's just more rare that we would use it.
It is extremely rare. So the only time that I can think of that a flashbang would be used could be in a mutual aid situation if we had like we saw in 2020 with the riots and the unlawful assembly, something of that nature, or if individuals were doing perhaps a high risk search warrant. That's a pretty common usage. When we talk about high risk, we're talking about a SWAT team going in because maybe there's a propensity for violence with certain subjects inside, they're armed. If we wanted to distract them, per se, someone, rather than going through the front door, which would be a common place, someone might deploy a flashbang outside a back bedroom window to distract the occupants inside as the officers went in through the front door. That way, the attention wouldn't be at the front door and the officers could get in safely.
I just want to verify this, that I understand correctly. So the assembly, this is equipment that you already have on hand currently, but the Assembly Bill 481 is requiring you to provide the education public notice.
Exactly. So 481, as you're correct. So this is equipment we already have. We're not asking for any additional. If we were to ask for additional, we'd have to go through the process of going through council, notifying the public. And every year that, regardless whether we have new equipment or not, we're still required to produce every year a report documenting what equipment we have. Did we purchase any? Did we use any equipment? How it was used? How much we used? And then of course, all the fiscal constraints with how much it costs, what it costs to replace. If we're talking about ammunition, are we getting more? And in our policy, we also put a cap on how much ammunition we have in stock and we can have on hand. So this is really about being transparent to the public and letting the public know exactly what equipment we have, what we intend to use it for, when we use it, and certainly what it costs. And in order to do that, we go through the city council for their approval, but we also make that report, as I mentioned, that'll be public too. It's my intention to make that report part of our annual report so that it's all encompassing, and we do it once a year.
Thank you.
I have a question. When you're talking about the rifles and the ammunition that you use from those rifles,
Yes.
my concern is, I know you're talking non-lethal ammunition. However, I want to know what kind of damage would that do on a person that is hit on the face by any of those ammunitions? And could that cause permanent damage on the person that is hit on the face by?
Sure. First, you mentioned the rifles. So we have two different variations. We have 308 rifles, and then we also have the 40 millimeter. The 40 millimeter is the non-lethal impact rounds, which I'm assuming you're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So again, it's 40 millimeter. As I mentioned earlier, if hit even in the appropriate spots, which are outlined not only by policy, but by AB 48, it is designed to incapacitate a person. So yes, there will be some soft tissue injury. Absolutely.
And for clarification, the 40 millimeter is not a rifle. It's described as the kinetic energy weapon.
Yes. So by definition, it is kinetic energy. It looks like a rifle, but it is classified as a kinetic energy device based on the assembly bill. But if that is used inappropriately and it is used and hit an individual in an area that is deemed inappropriate, such as you mentioned the face, it would do significant damage. Yes.
So if they hit them on the face or on the eye, could this person lose their eye?
It could be possible. Certainly people have lost their eye. Absolutely. That's why we have Assembly Bill 48. That's why we have our use of force policy, which two members of this commission already went through earlier this year when we looked at our use of, or I'm sorry, last year when we did our use of force policy and the 8 can't wait. The commission reviewed our use of force policy and made recommended changes. And I think it brought us up to date with what the industry standards are and in compliance with all the regulations. Now, as we come into this new year, there are additional regulations with AB 48. So we're also in compliance with that. But as with any tool, if you use it appropriately, there's always a chance of injury, certainly significant injury, as you brought out.
A second question I have is you mentioned grenades, and I can help, I think back to 1968 or something,
Mhm.
when pretty well-known Mexican American news person was covering a riot in East LA. When the police shot, he took refuge into establishment was open. I think it was a bar or something like that. And the police shot in there and hit him, and with a grenade, and the grenade hit him in the head, and this person died. So I understand what you're saying. However, I also understand that on account of that, a young, vibrant, intelligent, caring man was murdered, was assassinated because someone just shot indiscriminately into a place with this guy that wasn't doing anything but doing his reporting for the LA Times. So my question is, how much damage can those grenades do if he hits a person directly?
Those grenades won't do any damage because they're not fired from a weapon. Those are hand-thrown canisters.
Hand thrown.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So maybe the one in 68 was shot by something else. I don't know that.
I believe the one you're referring to is what's called a Fletcher round, and that was fired from a shotgun. And,
Oh.
it is an exploding round, which we don't use. I don't know any agency. I mean, there could be, but I'm not aware of any agency that uses those anymore. But it's certainly possible. But that is no different than a bullet flying out. Those Fletcher rounds are not designed to be fired at an individual. They were designed at that time to be impacted against a solid object, and then they would explode or deliver whatever munitions they had. But if I'm not mistaken, I believe that individual, that round went through and hit him in the head, which would be no different than a bullet hitting someone in the head.
Yeah, it killed him.
Yeah.
It killed him. Like 28 years old or something. It was a tragic thing that I would never want to see repeated. So just curious. I wanted to know.
Yeah,
So,
no one wants to see that repeated. And that's exactly why we have the policies and the changes in the law that we have today. And that's why we're going through this process, is so that we are not only transparent, but that we are following best practices, that our officers are trained to the latest standards, and that we are accountable for everything that we do. Every canister that we throw, every round that is fired, that officer is responsible for whatever damage or wherever that goes. And that significantly has changed since 1968 for those very same reasons.
I have a quick question, Chief. You mentioned the possibility that the LA sheriffs may not respond to a request. Given our inventory of military equipment, as you outlined, and standard law enforcement equipment, do you have the confidence that the South Pass Police can respond and keep us safe here?
As it stands right now, yes. I think we are certainly looking at what law enforcement is going to look like in the future. And just to give you an example, there is a potential that the Sheriff's Department will no longer police the Metro Gold Line. Our concern now is, if they are not policing it, who is? Is that going to be left to South Pasadena? And then if so, what equipment are we going to need that is specialized to to police that effectively. So if we have someone on the gold line, are we going to need additional equipment that may fall under this? And unfortunately, timing, we haven't had a chance to look at this. We won't know for sure with the gold line till later this summer. But it's certainly looking like South Pasadena may have to police that. And if so, we'll have to come back to the council with, if we need equipment that's on this list, we would have to go back to the council and do this public process again. But as we stand today, yeah, I think South Pasadena is very well equipped. But as law enforcement changes, needs change, societal demands change, it's something we're going to have to look at.
Okay. Chief, thank you for the report. Because it was an informational report, we don't make any motion to pass it to City Council. Is that correct?
Is correct.
Correct.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Let's move right to City Council Liaison. John Plymouth is here today.
Yes, good morning, everyone. Welcome, Walter, to the commission.
Thank you.
The city council is in the midst of getting ready for budget consultations in June. This happens to be a 3-year anniversary of our bargaining unit contracts. So as part of the budget discussions, we're also engaged in making sure we can strike good deals with our bargaining units, which involve employee compensation and benefits. That's a really important part of the city. The golf course is back open, which probably some of you know, and the volume and the number of people playing the golf course continues to increase, which is good. We're really glad that can happen. The Festival of Balloons will happen on July 4th, which is a Monday this year. They'll have both the parade, we'll have the post-parade festivities with food and activities, and the fireworks show at the high school. So all of that is being planned to go forward, so please make your plans accordingly. We have had a number of really interesting senior events the last week or so, and a number of other things coming up as far as the schedule goes. As you can tell, everyone's anxious to get out there after COVID and participate in activities. The 626 Golden Streets program, which was a Ciclavia event from South Pasadena all the way to San Gabriel with open roads, that was very successful. Lots of people came out for that. And then, of course, the previous day was the Eclectic in South Pasadena with 13 stages. Last estimate I saw was 9,000 to 10,000 people estimated attended that event. So very successful event, free event to the public, funded through the Chamber of Commerce and from the city. So excellent job by the city celebrating our arts culture. And if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.
Okay, thank you, council member. Let's move right to staff liaison communications.
Hello again. I just wanted to give a brief update on the police department assessment. It was our goal that we would start a Public Safety Commission working group this meeting. I just want to update you on where you're at, or where we are at. We released the RFP. Unfortunately, we did not get a lot of interest. So we are going to have to go back out and advertise and request additional or drum up additional interest so that we can have a variety of potential candidates, so that when we do get those, we can convene again with the working group, and then have those commissioners that on it help weed through and pick the appropriate vendor for us. But we were very disappointed in the response we got when we did the RFQ. We've got I would say somewhere between, I'm sorry, 7, and then for the final RFP we only had 2, which doesn't give us a lot of opportunity to pick a really robust and qualified vendor to do that. So we're still working on that. Unfortunately, it's going to be pushed out a little bit. So we're going to go back out here shortly and contact some of the vendors and some of the other organizations that might be able to provide some information, and then hopefully get something back so that we can move forward with this. So just a quick update on that.
Thanks, Chief.
I'm sorry, do you have anybody have any questions for me? Okay.
Morning, everybody. My name is Mark Donville, and I'm a division chief with San Marino Fire Department. I'm here representing Fire Chief Riddle, who couldn't make it today. So I just want to introduce myself. As you know, if maybe you don't, I'm sure you do, but we do a shared command with San Marino and South Pasadena, and I'm actually the on-duty division chief today. But like I said, Chief Riddle couldn't be here, so I'm representing for him. He really has nothing more to report other than on Saturday, we graduated. The South Pasadena Fire Department had their CERT program, which I hope you all know or aware of. They had 12 graduate on Saturday, so that's very good participation, and 12 more members for the CERT team for the community in the event of a disaster. Other than that, the fire department's doing really well, functioning well, and there's nothing else to report on his behalf. So thank you.
Chief, I have a quick question. I don't know, do you have a sense of the, we're hearing numbers generally in terms of COVID
Right.
in the area, but do you have any sense of kind of the numbers in the South Pass San Marino area?
For our two departments, it's still very low. As you know, it's always a concern, and numbers could go up and down. For us, our call actually throughout Area C, which is the area that we make up, and our dispatch, the call volume is still very low. On average, from what I hear right now, we have maybe one every 2-3 days that we get dispatched to, but we can't confirm that if it's a confirmed COVID until they're actually tested at the hospital. But through our dispatch, they do the appropriate questioning for a patient. And if they feel like they have the symptoms, they'll dispatch us as a certain call. But fortunately, right now, the hospital status, everything's still low. There's no wait at the ERs, and call volume is still down for those type of calls. So hopefully it continues to stay that way. And, with the summer months coming, we'll keep that at that point.
Thank you.
But we're, our EMS, our supplies, and that we have, we're fully stocked again. So if there is a spike, we're prepared. All right. All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Let's go to Commissioner Communications. Amin, do you want to lead us off?
I don't believe I have any particular communications, but again, welcome to Commissioner Cervantes, and congratulations to Commissioner Donnelly. And I've enjoyed the chairmanship over the past year, and I look forward to your leadership.
Yes, I'd like to appreciate Commissioner Amin for your thoughtful and graceful leadership and your commitment. And I really appreciate you taking on that role and responsibility since I've been on the commission. So I appreciate that. And thank you for Chair Donnelly for taking on the leadership. I really appreciate that. I'd also like to just acknowledge for a moment our former South Pasadena Police Chief Bill Reese, who died. It's been a couple months, but in between our commission meetings here, who was a very long time resident of South Pasadena and a good citizen, and we sit on his shoulders here today. So
Thank you. Walter?
What I don't know if this is relevant to bring in at this time, but I live on District 4, and the street that goes by there is Garfield Avenue, which as it goes up north, it turns into Grevillea. A week ago, we had a horrific accident in that street. This woman came flying in around 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. She shared the side of a car. She went into somebody's yard. And I mean, she caused so much havoc. And as the people came out, it sounded like a bomb explosion, the way the whole thing went down. And as the people, residents came out, and this woman came out of the car, she came out and she said, I think I might have hit something. It's like you think you caused so much damage. And what I want to bring up, this is not the first time this happened. By the way, this woman refused to take a breathalyzer test when the police came. So she was carried off to the Alhambra police jail. And then, but shortly before that, maybe a year or so before that, we had another incident where someone also coming from the south on Garfield, it took the turn and it climbed up fences and it went into this huge cactus tree and sheared half of it. And because of that, didn't hit the house. But I wonder the degree of speed. I never saw who he was or anything, and I never heard the rest of it. But going back even 2 years before that, there was this person that came on Garfield, knocked down a tree, and right around the same spot, and also almost took down an electric pole. So I think at this point, it's high time that something is being done for that. I know there is very little you can do to control a drunk or someone on drugs. However, the way this, I guess there is a turn where Garfield is coming from Alhambra, but over there it starts turning toward Revelia. And I'm just wondering if something could be done to avoid this, because it is horrific. In the personal myself, whenever I try to cross the street on Revelia, and we do have the pedestrian crossing thing, as I try to walk, I have people that come flying in and they reach their brakes and they're kind of making me run faster, walk faster, because they're trying to move right on me. And there is just no safety at all. And I'm wondering, why don't we control these speed freaks that are in such a rush? And the same thing goes with Mission. These people, after they stop for the children to go across Marengo, but as they come to Milan and the street before before Garfield, they start speeding and they don't want to stop for anything. My thing is to at least put one of those things that you have by where the school children cross, where states one of those poles that say, is the law, stop, you stop, it means you. And same thing goes for doing it for Milan and for Montrose, because these people just could not be bothered. And these people are making so much noise about less police. I'm sorry, we need more police. We don't need less police. We need more people, police patrolling and keeping an eye on these people that are breaking the law. Because when I moved here 4 years ago, you did not see that. Now this is a common occurrence. They don't think anything of it. And I wish something could be done about it. The thing that happened last week was so horrific, because thank God nobody was hurt. But still, probably Chief can give you a little more detail on what it was, what that was all about. But
As far as the accident goes, you're absolutely correct. It was a individual that was driving under the influence and crashed, and they were arrested. But the police department would be happy to put out our radar trailer on Garfield, as well as do additional patrols. We'll have our traffic unit go out there. And then I will let our public works director, Ted Gerber, know about it. And perhaps he can look at maybe some alternative signage or some sort of control device so that we can address those concerns.
yeah, to me is when you put the radar thing, it's good for about 2 weeks. and then they go back to their same old ways. I think it'd be more effective if we have a patrol policeman in a motorcycle watching that area and giving tickets left and right, because the only thing these people are going to listen to is tickets. And also on those walk things, put a signage saying you have to do a complete stop, not a rolling stop, number one. And number two, is the law to let the pedestrians walk? Because if you cannot walk there, what are you going to do?
Absolutely. So there's 3 E's in traffic: education, enforcement, and education, enforcement, engineering. So between the police department and the public works, we will meet and see how we can address those issues. But we're happy to send our traffic unit out there and then the radar trailer this week so that we can start on that.
Thank you.
Andrew, can we ask Commissioner Ding to comment at this point?
Yeah, as a member of the public.
Commissioner Ding, do you have anything to add? Is he still with us? Okay, he may have dropped off the Zoom. So I will finish and say, Walter, welcome to the commission.
Thank you.
Glad to have you here. Amin, thank you so much for your service as the chair. If there is no further business, we can adjourn. It is 9:45 a.m. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.